from Zechariah 9 through 13. Rejoice greatly, daughter Zion. Shout, daughter Jerusalem. See, your king comes to you, righteous and victorious, lowly and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. I will take away the chariots from Ephraim and the war horses from Jerusalem, and the battle bow will be broken. He will proclaim peace to the nations. His rule will extend from sea to sea and from the river to the ends of the earth. As for you, because of the blood of my covenant with you, I will free your prisoners from the waterless pit. Return to your fortress, you prisoners of hope. Even now I announce that I will restore twice as much to you. I will bend Judah as I bend my bow. I will fill it with Ephraim. I will rouse your son Zion against your son's Greece and make you like a warrior's sword. And from Matthew 21, 1 through 11. As they approached Jerusalem and came to Bethphage on the Mount of Olives, Jesus sent 2 disciples, saying to them, "Go to the village ahead of you, and at once you will find a donkey tied there, with her colt by her. Untie them and bring them to me. If anyone says anything to you, say that the Lord needs them, and will send them right away." This took place to fulfill what was spoken through the prophet. Say to daughter Zion, see, your king comes to you, gentle and riding on a donkey, and on a colt, the foal of a donkey. The disciples went and did as Jesus instructed them. They brought the donkey and the colt and placed their cloaks on them for Jesus to sit on. A very large crowd spread their cloaks on the road, while others cut branches from the trees and spread them on the road. The crowds that went ahead of him and those that followed shouted, "Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest heaven." When Jesus entered Jerusalem, the whole city was stirred and asked, "Who is this?" The crowds answered, "This is Jesus, the prophet from Nazareth in Galilee." This is God's word.
There's so much meaning. There's so many layers in this passage. And we as a church are joining churches all over our city right now, all over the state, all over the country, all over the world. And we're all, hopefully, unless we're totally checked out, we're looking at the same text or texts, depending on which of the Gospels decided to look at. This is Palm Sunday. This is the beginning of the end of Holy Week. And it's a very special occasion. Right? It's not just any time. They didn't just go to Jerusalem because it would be fun. They're in Jerusalem because it's the Passover. They're going to Jerusalem like many other of the feasts, Jesus and his disciples, and any other devout Jew who would travel from tens, maybe even hundreds of miles away. It was one of those things you planned for. It was on your calendar every year. It was a terribly special occasion. But it was one of many special occasions that was always on Jesus and the disciples and every other Israelite that really kept Yahweh and his covenant, the Passover, freedom from slavery in Egypt, really on the family calendar. So it's an incredibly special occasion. This is the Passover, the big feast. And at special occasions, a lot of times, how you make your entrance sends a message. Did you know that? Have you ever had a big, maybe corporate party or, a big to-do for your family? And a lot of times you save kind of a special entrance for a special guest or somebody that you really want to honor and you really want to send a message. When there's a special occasion, how you make your entrance sends a message. I think about how when Top Gun Maverick, anybody seen Top Gun Maverick, right? Kind of gets the hairs on the back of my neck standing up just saying that. Top Gun Maverick, it's kind of the sequel to Top Gun. And when they did the world premiere of that, I think they did a couple different world premieres, but they did the big one down in San Diego. And they had the world premiere on the deck, on the what's the place where you land the planes, right? They had the world premiere on an aircraft carrier, the USS Midway, right? And just this big hoopla. Everybody's dressed up. Everybody's looks beautiful, right? Everybody's in tuxes and beautiful dresses, but there's somebody missing. The star of the show, Tom Cruise. Where's Tom Cruise? Everybody's here. Everybody's got champagne. There's red carpet. And then the helicopter comes in. Tom Cruise's own helicopter that he's probably flying. And it was like, this is a special occasion. And I'm going to send a message. I'm going to remind you who's the star of the show, right? You guys were all excellent supporting roles. You play an excellent supporting cast. But let's not forget who this show is really about, right? When you have a special occasion, how you make your entrance sends sometimes a not so subtle message. I think about like any home game in Eugene at the university, right? At Autzen, it's like every home game is a special occasion. It's like we've never done this before. It's like we've never had a home game. I guess let's get the beers out. Let's tailgate. Let's eat. Let's party because we're only going to do this 6 more times this year. You know, and we're going to spend $2,000 this weekend, and we're going to do that in 2 weeks when Cal's in town. And you know, and when the visiting team comes out at this very special occasion of a home game, whether it's at Autzen or Matthew Knight Arena, you know, when the away team comes out, it's like, we don't even know who these people are. It's like, do we even announce them? Oh, the Wazoo Wildcats or the Huskies. We don't even want to even announce them. We'll just let them come in. But man, when the home team comes in, I mean, there's smoke. Sometimes there's fireworks. The music is bumping. I mean, it's like, this is the home team. This is a special occasion. This is a home game. And when you're at a special occasion, right, the way you make your entrance, it sends a message, we're the home team, not you. This is about us. You're going to have to really have your A game if you're even going to come close to winning in our town. This is our town, right? It just sends a very loud and clear message. When there's a special occasion, and this is a special occasion, but it's capital S special this time. Because it was always special for Jesus and his disciples, but there's something unique, something Jesus is signaling something that this is a unique Passover. This is like no other Passover. This is the Passover that is at the center of Israel's history and now the world's history. And Matthew wants to show us that Jesus very intentionally, in this very special occasion, what he's about to do, he's going to enter this special occasion in a way that's going to send a very actually nuanced message. It's not like, Tom Cruise flying in on a helicopter. That's just obvious and okay. Or the Ducks when they come in, like that's just an obvious, we're the home team. This is our hometown. It's pretty obvious. When Matthew has Jesus riding in on a donkey's colt, there are some things that are obvious. There's some things that are nuanced. There's a whole lot that Matthew wants to tell us about how Jesus enters and what kind of a message he intends to send. So when Matthew has Jesus doing this, one of the things that I love about it is that Jesus is completely in control. I mean, he has this all pre-arranged, right? They're coming in, and he's coming into town. He's got the donkey and the colt. Everything's all arranged. He tells the disciples what everything is planned. And the first thing that Matthew really wants to show us, by the way Jesus enters into Jerusalem, the first maybe aspect of the message, is that this is a royal entry. This isn't just any entry. Jesus is not just any ordinary Israelite. Jesus is saying, this is a royal entrance this time, boys. I mean, he knows Zechariah 9. He knows about the prophecy. He's stepping into the story of Israel's king. He's stepping into the story of Israel's king to be crowned, to be coronated. To use the Lord of the Rings, this is the return of the king. And so Jesus says, this is special, but boys, this is really special. We are going to make a royal entrance this time. I mean, notice the emphasis Matthew puts on it. It says, this took place to fulfill what was spoken by the prophet. Say to daughter Zion, behold, your king is coming to you. Your king. I mean, king is a strong word, not a king, but the king, the Messiah, the king. These passages, Zechariah 9, Psalm 2, Psalm 110, so many of these passages, they would take on almost like a life of their own. I mean, they just took on so much excitement about when this king will come and what it'll be like. And so Jesus is stepping into a royal storyline. He's saying this is a royal kind of entrance. Notice the people, what they're shouting. They're not just saying, hail, good friend. I mean, when they ask him, who is this? They say, well, he's the prophet. You know, that's verse 11. He's the prophet. But they're also saying he's the son of David. Who's David? David is the king by which every other king was measured. He was the poster child king, despite all of his flaws. He was the king that first king said, you want to be like this king. Every king wants to be like David, and they're all seen in light of him. They're saying, Hosanna, save us, son of David. We know what Zechariah 9 is saying. We want you to bring peace, but we want you to kick these people out that are oppressing us. Finally, bring it in. We want you to be king. And Jesus says, it's time. Boys, it's time for us to not just walk into Jerusalem like we've been doing these last few years. It's time to ride. And can you imagine what the disciples were thinking? They're like, yes, finally. No more walking. We've seen the power. We've seen the things that he can do. He can calm storms. He can feed people out in the wilderness, diseases, demons. He has complete control. Jesus is going to kick butt and take names. Oh, I can't believe we're going to ride into Jerusalem. The kingdom is coming. Can you believe this? Boys, go and get my steed. It's time to ride. It's in just that little village up ahead. Okay, we'll go get it. But remember what Zechariah 9 said. No war horses. Remember, I've been talking to you about this kingdom. We're not riding some big black, draft horse stallion. Remember how Israel's God. Remember how our God becomes king. Remember, boys, we're riding into town, but it's on a little toy pony. Oh, we're going to ride into town on that? I mean, the disappointment, the excitement, we're going to ride. And then to see Jesus, the King of Kings, riding on a colt that's never been ridden, next to its mother, because the crowds are going to be shouting. Everybody's laying down their blankets. Have you ever been on an animal that's never been ridden before? Why not? Because they will buck you off. What gentleness Jesus must have had. We don't have him doing any kind of a miracle here, but it is almost not maybe like a lowercase m miracle for Jesus to get on the back of an animal that's never been ridden, to ride into one of the most raucous crowds where everything would have just probably had it just come completely undone. And he says, that's my steed. That's how Israel's God becomes king. You know the text. So in one sense, the message is very loud and clear. This is a royal entrance. This is how Israel's God becomes king. This is the storyline. I'm stepping in. We're riding into town, boys. And the disciples just had to have been so excited. Finally, the kingdom has come. Heads are going to roll. This is going to be, this is what we've been waiting for. Now, I've already been talking about who's going to be the greatest. We are going to bring in the kingdom. We're going to kick everybody out. Finally. And then Jesus walks into town on a very small, humble animal, maybe his feet just a few inches above the ground. Jesus being almost as big as the very creature, the very beast of burden that's potentially carrying him. And, I wonder if the disciples felt maybe just a little sheepish. Like, here's the big royal entrance. I know what Zechariah 9 says, but maybe that was just a metaphor. Maybe that was just And Jesus comes in, not only making a royal entrance, but a very humble entrance. An animal that has never even had anything on its back. Donkeys are They're not necessarily bad animals, like they're not looked down upon. It's just a very common animal. You know, as a beast of burden, they carried all of your stuff to the feast. They carried all of your stuff to the marketplace. Jesus, being apprenticed to his dad, being a stonemason, maybe carried a lot of his tools to the work site to do the stonework or the woodwork, building the walls or the cities or the buildings that were surrounding and in the midst of his native land. I mean, this was an animal that you were very familiar with. It was a working animal. It wasn't a white-collar animal. It was a blue-collar animal. It was an animal Jesus probably was very used to, very comfortable with. It was a blue-collar animal carrying a blue-collar guy, carrying a carpenter, carrying a guy whose hands were seasoned with a day's work. And so what Matthew's doing is actually pretty paradoxical. He's sending lots of messages here, that this entrance on this special occasion is sending several messages. One, this is your king riding into town. This is the return of the king. This is a royal entrance. And this is a humble entrance. What I've found is that we tend to like one of those aspects of Jesus more than the other. We love the kingly nature of Jesus, his power, his majesty, and maybe we're not so connected to the humility of him. Or we love the humble nature. We love how he comes in and, we love Psalm 23 and but we don't maybe like Psalm 22 where it talks about Jesus' royal power, about how God crowns his king and he shatters the nations like potter's vessels. And Matthew is putting them both on the table. He's saying, here is your royal king, crown him. And he's so accessible. He's riding just a humble little animal. I mean, you can touch him. You can throw your garment down in front of him. You can say, save us. You can hug him. You can be a part of this throng, and they're welcoming him in. And Matthew's saying, see, look, behold, your king is coming. Your royal entrance. The king has come, and he's absolutely royal, and he's absolutely humble. Zechariah 9 gave us another layer where it said, by riding into town like this, it was a symbol of peace, right? It was a symbol of benevolence. And Jesus isn't the only one to do this. Other kings in the ancient world, sometimes even Caesar himself, depending on what kind of message he wanted to send to his own hometown in Rome, or maybe to one of the outlying villages or cities. If he wanted to come in, if there was some squabbling, if there was some hint of overthrowing the Roman regime, he would get on his big war horse and make a very clear message. We own you. This is our town. If there was a village or an outlying town that was paying their taxes exceptionally well, or he just wanted to show that he was grateful they were in the kingdom, he would ride in on something small like a donkey or a smaller horse, just to say, we're so grateful you're part of the kingdom, keep the taxes coming. But he would send that kind of a message of peace, a message of benevolence. And Zechariah is saying, behold, your king is coming. And Matthew doesn't quote that, but it's all in there. This is a royal entrance. This is a humble entrance. This is kind of an olive branch entrance. This is a symbol of peace. This is a symbol of benevolence. And yet, again, I can't get past the disciples. I can't get past sort of the excitement and maybe even a little bit of the letdown. I'm reading that in a little bit, but I have to wonder, the kingdom is coming and rouse yourself. We're riding into town. And here we are. One commentator said, a man on a donkey is not looking for a war. Or is he? Do you know what happens throughout the rest of the week? I mean, even right as he's riding into town, where does Jesus go first? He goes right to the temple. And depending on the gospel account you read, he goes into the temple and he's braiding a cord of leather. And he's just filled with rage and fury. And depending on which gospel you read, he wasn't, and he clears out the entire temple. I mean, he's throwing tables over. And the gospel author says, zeal for your house has consumed me. And he's absolutely acting like not only a king, but like Yahweh himself. And he's keeping everybody out. He's shooing everybody out. He's throwing money on the ground. He's keeping everybody from doing business. Shortly before that, he walks up to a fig tree because he's hungry. And it's a little early in the year, but he goes up because he's hungry. He's been on a long journey, and he sees a fig tree, and there's no fruit on it. And he says, curse you and die. And the tree withers up and dies. And it's a symbol of the fruitfulness that Jerusalem was supposed to bear, the fruitfulness that Israel was supposed to be, how the people that were supposed to be a part of the world's solution have now become a part of the problem. And so he's cursing the fig tree, but really it's a symbol of his judgment. He's coming to bring judgment as the king. If you read Holy Week, how many conversations does Jesus have where he's getting along with people? I mean, he's at odds at every turn. People are questioning him, challenging him. Sadducees are giving him a hypothetical thing about the resurrection that they don't even believe in. Pharisees are saying, if you're really this, then do that. There's no conversation, even sometimes with his own disciples, where everything is getting along, Jesus is completely going to war. And it's not with Greece. It's with his own people. It's with the establishment, the power structure that Jerusalem has become that's actually prohibiting God's blessing from using Israel's people as a light to the nations. A man on a donkey is not looking for war. Well, not with Greece, but actually with sin and death itself. Jesus is riding into town as a royal, humble king that's about ready to have a crown of thorns pushed down on his skull. He's about ready to be coronated. He's about ready to say, this is how God becomes king. He's coming to bear our judgment, but he's also coming to bring judgment. I mean, I just encourage you this week, Holy Week, man, start here, pick up in Mark 11, go to Luke 20-ish, and just read through the Holy Week and look at how Jesus, when he rides into town, he is absolutely making a declaration of war. Because see, this isn't the coming in of a board member. This isn't the coming in of a council member. This is the coming in of the king. And the king is coming in to challenge all the power structures. He's coming in to ask and answer all the hard questions. He's coming in here to say, I am the king. Deal with me. Either enthrone me or crucify me. And here's the thing. That's exactly the plan. The plan is for him to be crucified, which will lead to his enthronement. Do you see that? We know that's the perspective we have. And they think the only way we can get rid of this false king, this parody of a king, is we kill him. But see, that's the whole story. The story is this is how he becomes king. This is how he goes to war with. This is how he bears our sin. This is how he judges our sin. This is how he deals with not just Greece and Rome, but us. This is how he deals with our sin without dealing with us. Matthew's packing all of this in. He's saying, see, your king is coming. He's royal. He's humble. And he's coming to go to war. He's coming to go to war with sin itself. He's coming to go to war with all of our good intentions that never materialized. He's coming to go to war with everything we were supposed to be but weren't. He's coming to go to war and to be crushed underneath the weight of it. A man on a donkey is not looking for a war. Well, certainly not with Greece. But with sin and death, yes. And I want to ask you as we lead into it, just a time of singing together and responding. We all need this king. And I want to ask you, have you enthroned this king? There's a sense in which God in Jesus has become king, whether you and I acknowledge it or not. And yet, Jesus rides into town in such a way, in such a humble and yet such an incredibly obvious way to say, I am the king. Will you crown me or will you not?